Hello, welcome to Witchy Wisdom from Wisty's Witch Hat, where I pull an idea out of my witch's hat. And we talk about some witchy wisdom. Inside of my hat here, I have a bunch of questions from the collective about spiritual development and the conscious healing journey. If you're new here, my name is Wysteria Root, and I am a mystic mentor and professional tarot reader who has helped thousands of people all over the country reconnect with the magic of the divine feminine and empower their life through everyday rituals of personal transformation. Let's get into it. Ta-da! What can I do about the evil ancestors in my bloodline? Coming out the gate swinging with this question here. Thank you so much for submitting it. I am excited to answer this. To answer that question, I feel like I first should talk a little bit about my own heritage and my own story. So on my dad's side of the family, I'm extremely Scottish and Danish. And Canadian. My dad was a first generation, he wasn't even an American. I'm a first generation American. He was a Canadian, and his mom was Scottish, and her family was Scottish going way back into the old country. And on my mom's side, we're kind of a mix of Eastern European and French and Lithuanian. And I grew up mostly with my mom, and I didn't really get to connect with my dad's side of the family the way that I really wanted to. And the way that I kind of coped with that was by connecting with like the ancestral spirits of my lineage. I felt like they were really strong spirit guides for me, and they started helping me remember herbalism and past life regression and ritual and magic from an extremely young age. And I was lucky enough to be like fostered in that, though I think that like my family thought I was kind of kidding, and I was really leaning into my practice a lot. And so a lot of my practice began with spirit communication with my ancestors and the natural world. And from there, it's grown a lot. I have read tarot professionally for a lot of people, and in that process, I've channeled different people's spirit guides in different ways, and I've read for people from all different walks of life. And so that's sort of the perspective that I'm walking into this question with, is as a channeler and as a white person living in America, and also as a ancestral generational curse breaker myself. So the first thing that we can do about the dark, evil, maybe like bad ancestors in our timeline or in our bloodlines, there's two ways that I want to go with this. And the first way is like the active thing that you can do that's an external thing, which is look to people of color, Indigenous people, especially Indigenous like women, and like medicine people of marginalized, underrepresented, queer communities. Because when you're wanting to unpack the trauma and the biases that have been carried along in your own bloodline, like looking to people who are really connected to the story of the people who our ancestors, once again speaking as a white person, like directly impacted, like we can learn better from them, like what to do and how to be better together in conscious community than we can by like going and listening to a bunch of other people who share the same perspectives as us. Like one of the best things that we can do to honor our ancestors is to grow from their place of ignorance and to like expand our horizons and connect as a global community and really begin to understand the nuances of different people's culture and find bridges between those things and really seek things that are other than you with humility and grace and respect. And then, when there are people who are still being affected by some of those practices that were put in place by some of our colonizer ancestors. Like, seek how you as a living person in this timeline can help another living person in this timeline who is being affected by things from the past that are playing out today in the future. So that's definitely like step one. Learn how to be a good ally and what that actually means, and show up in spaces with humility and open ears and an open heart, and like the willingness to empower and uplift the voices of the people who have often been silenced. The next thing is like a more internal thing, because now we sort of talk about the nature of good and evil, right? The evil ancestors in our bloodline were once children, were once innocent and pure, just as everyone else was. And it was the conditions of their environment that produced the kind of indiscretions and behaviors that they exhibited, the same way that happens for everyone now, right? It goes into like when you're healing from your parental wounds, like you want to be able to look at them as whole people instead of like just as your parents. So like extending that to your ancestors, like looking at your great 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 grandfather, and or even for me personally, like I can make another personal story, is like my grandfather, who I never met, on my mother's side was a intense man. He was the son of a Holocaust survivor, and I like his body was alchemizing all of that anger, and he was just a really really dangerous, vicious person. And I had this one experience where I was reading an astrology chart at a Renaissance festival for someone, and I read for all of his friends, and he like they all loved it, right? They really resonated. Those are my favorites to do, like big groups of friends who are all just like here to have a good time and know each other really well. So they're like, oh my god, that's so accurate. Like I love doing those readings. But this guy, he was the last one to get a reading from me, and he was a skeptic, and he was like, I don't want you to tell me anything good about me. I want you to tell me all of the bad things about me. And I was like, okay. Like I'm a very optimistic person, and I really want to uplift people, and so I don't ignore the shadow, but I certainly like I don't nitpick at shadows like that. And so it pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I did it, and it was a funny reading, and it was good. And that day when I got off of work, as I was walking back to the car, as I was kind of like integrating, communing with my guides and sort of like grounding and closing, I felt the presence of my grandfather. And I heard him say, like, you are so different from me. I never in a million years would have struggled to find a negative thing to say about a person. I never could have done that. I didn't have that kind of access to love. So thank you so much for your ability to be so kind that it was hard for you to be nasty. And I tell that story to say, like, it's in your own growth, it's in your own healing that expands and rights the wrongs that came from a place of pain and trauma of the past. What can we do about the evil ancestors in our bloodline? Also, I would say like the last thing that we can do about the evil ancestors in our bloodline is to acknowledge where ego and comfort can play out these cycles and have like a grip on us as a culture, and where those sort of archaic ideologies that put people in very transactional, scarcity, superiority mindset, like that's very ingrained in our culture as Americans. Like we're a very individualist society. We talk about like civil rights, but like we all know that there's like this divide that's like always been there. And so even like I'm a person who went to public school, you know, so like all of my education has been watching my lived experience and what I was told in public school. And so like there was always this soft unpacking of racism and sexism and being like, oh, but it's all good now. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I think I was like 16 when they legalized gay marriage, you know, like it was a recent thing. And like, we all remember everything that's happened over the course of the last couple of years. And so what do we do about our evil ancestors? We become fucking good ones, you know? We become really good descendants. We become brave descendants. We stick up for our truth. You have to witness and not look away and turn away and go internal and ask yourself like questions about like, why am I making the choices that I'm choosing, and who do these choices affect, and what I'm doing today, is it making the world a better place for the future, or am I like leaving it a worse place than I found it, right? It goes kind of into this deeper question of like, what do you want your legacy to be? And how do you live in a way every single day that is like moving one lever to make the world a better place? And, you know, sometimes that's a really making your bubble really small and doing a really good job taking care of yourself. And sometimes that is making a big impact in your community, right? Like it all comes in these different sorts of cycles. So I would say that, you know, in order to right the wrongs of the past, like you have to live fully embodied in your most courageous version of yourself right now. And don't be afraid to admit when you're wrong. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions and say, I don't quite understand. And especially if there are people who are different from you or don't understand like your perspective and way that you're looking at the world, like the more that you can commune with different perspectives and just kind of observe them, and then also observe yourself as like, where do I resonate with that? I think from that point it's the most powerful and seemingly simple, but it's much easier said than done thing that we can do in order to really weave a brighter future, which I think is the root of this question. And you know, the person who asked this question actually shared an amazing concept with me that I want to shout out in this video as well and share with you guys. Casey's idea was that I'll never forget how she said it to me, because it was just like this huge light bulb that went off in my mind. She was talking about how, you know, we don't really get to know exactly what our ancestors thought about certain political or social things that were happening during their lifetime. You know, like we can look back and we can kind of speculate and be like, oh, maybe they thought like this. But now that we have the internet, like you can push record and talk about your lived experience, like what you're witnessing from your eyes, how it makes you feel, what you believe, all of those sorts of things. Like our like social media presences have the chance to be this beautiful digital conversation for our descendants, for people in the far future to like maybe watch these videos from this time and be like, what did grandma think about that thing that was going on in 2025? Like you can scroll back into the archive and watch this video, and maybe your great grandkid or a stranger that you'll never even know, like way down the road, will find these videos and we'll really get to know like what we thought was happening in this moment. So it's interesting the way that technology changes this idea of past and present and future, and all those sorts of things can start to weave together. And so I guess I would encourage you, as we're stepping out of this space with this question, is what does it mean to be a good descendant? And what does it mean to be a good ancestor? And how can you live in that truth? That's my question for you. If you have any questions that you would like to submit to the Witch's Hat to have answered by either me and my own experience or Great Spirit, you can ask me to just channel it instead, and I will do that. I would be honored to answer your questions, and this is super fun, and I can't wait to see you soon. And if you're interested in getting any readings from me or continuing our work further on the path, all of my social media and links are below. Thank you so much for supporting me on my journey, and I hope you have a great day.